A while back, I did a classic video game creepypastas video. In it, I talked about a handful of classic video game creepypastas. Today, I bring you more. For me, these creepypastas were a source of fear as a kid, even if by modern standards they aren't very good. An active imagination is a deadly weapon, and it certainly did its damage to me. Now I look back on these stories with a smile, remembering all the good memories and an ancient sense of fear rising, one that time never took away from me. I enjoy the concept of computer files being able to hold something more malicious, like haunted or cursed files that can cause things to happen when viewed, opened, or even just downloaded. JVK1166Z.esp, or just JVK, is a story of a Morrowind mod by the same name, one that is shrouded in mystery. Actually getting the mod to work was difficult, as the game would often refuse to load with it active. Waiting for it to load would typically corrupt saves and your installation of the game crashing in the process. Warnings were spread around, telling people to avoid the mod with good reason. It was malicious in all evident possible ways, but what if you actually managed to play it? By playing the game through DOSBox, it was possible to experience the mod, albeit in a very laggy state with no access to the options, console, or load game. The player would first notice that almost all vital NPCs for the main story are dead. Another issue is the constant health drain. Staying in one area for too long would cause it to worsen. Dying to this health drain would reveal the existence of a being known as the Assassin, which would crawl all over the dead player. This inhuman beast would follow the player, appearing out of the corner of their eye just out of reach, where they would often flee upon being spotted. At night, all NPCs would, on interval, leave their houses and would only say, "Watch the sky," until returning to normal minutes later. To make a long story short, the author explains to us what another individual they are keeping in contact with said about his own experiences with the mod. The night skies, according to the individual, were accurate to real life, providing an assumed date as to where the sky was from. Said individual continued to monitor the sky, avoiding the assassin's wrath. The assassin would scream at the player now, giving them a warning to move or be struck. From here, the stability of the player began to drop, until eventually giving up on trying to solve the mystery of this mod. Someone reported seeing the assassin in the main game after playing the mod, the figure appearing and scaring the player in question. Yet not everyone was experiencing this. The story ends with the individual the author was keeping in contact with explaining a series of dreams about the assassin in JVK, finally claiming he can hear something tapping on his window, unable to tell if he's still dreaming or not. This story is actually quite good, even now. I've never even played or really seen anything from Morrowind, and yet I was able to follow the story just fine. It leaves a mystery, one that I don't think we can solve. I don't even know if the author had a resolution for the mod's big mystery, or if it was purposely confusing to make things more mysterious. The assassin being something more than just a strange modded monster, and instead being an entity contained within the mod itself, is an interesting idea. And the ending would easily be seen as support for this idea, whether he was so far gone mentally that he was hallucinating, or if the assassin was really outside his window, ready to claim him for finding out too much about this. It's something I enjoy being left unconfirmed. I left some details out of the story due to not feeling I have the proper authority as someone who's never played Morrowind before to explain them, but if you want, the story is always out there on the historical archive of the Creepypasta Wiki waiting to be read. Just be careful with what you discover. That tapping might not be just in your head. What if an Easter egg or secret went undiscovered for over 20 years in a well-known popular video game? What if it changed everything you knew about the franchise? I Hate You is the story of the author encountering something strange while playing Super Mario World on an emulator. As the story goes, the author had been playing from this ROM for the longest time, only for him to find something odd one playthrough. The Blind Boo, he called it. The thing that stopped him from leaving the sunken ship level. It had no eyes, and thus, that name was given to it. The author then notices a key in a keyhole where it just shouldn't be, and upon exiting the level like that, something unsettling happens. A new level path opens up, leading to a whirlpool. The level's name was Oh God No. The Bowser Cave was now bleeding from its empty eye sockets. The level was like a castle, but underwater. The first true room of the level being a long hallway with no room to jump. Blind Boos hung outside the boundaries of the level, only reacting with a shudder to the sound of Mario jumping, but never doing anything more. Soon, Mario was being pursued by a sudden, bleeding Banzai Bill. There was no way around it, no way to proceed, and so the author used cheats to gain invincibility, finishing the bleeding Bill without effort. The message, "I hate you," was looming out of bounds among the Blind Boos. Mario was soon chased down by angry Big Boos, those of which didn't stand a chance against the invincibility cheat. "Why won't you die?" was written out of bounds. A pipe at the end of the long hall led Mario into a sunken castle environment, one home to a long line of thwomps covered in a cartoonish blood. They didn't react to Mario, instead choosing to fall randomly without purpose. Movement on the bloody floor was slippery, and each thwomp went down with a single touch to nobody's surprise. Mario entered a new area full of spikes, floor and ceiling. The spikes eventually containing long-since dead Marios, their bodies floating lifelessly in the water. Nearing the exit, the author was shocked to see the bodies began to pursue Mario, floating towards him at astonishing speeds. It was clear if they touched him, they'd be defeated, but the author didn't want to find out. Entering the pipe nearby quickly, it spit Mario out in a simple empty corridor leading to a large boss door and a strange mushroom. The author didn't even want to consider touching it. Mario entered a bridge above lava, a face in the background watching him from a window. Then, the reveal happens. Luigi, Mario's brother, upset, angry, jealous. This was all him. The level ended with a short fight the author couldn't control where Luigi fell into lava, a familiar phrase escaping him. Oh God, no. The game from there was normal. The whirlpool level now inaccessible. Nothing had changed except for the final image. I loved this story. I'll just say that now. I don't really think the twist worked too well in terms of horror. Luigi being the villain and jealous just kind of becomes funny. But the way this story was written, besides a bit of melodramatic cheese you expect from classic creepypastas, it really added something. The way the story ends is chilling, at least for me. I get genuine chills. The way the author minimally addresses the final image. You're not giving any details as to what it means, but you already know. Luigi's burnt, deformed face is all you need to figure out what his fate was. If it wasn't for Mario's mild look of disappointment at his crispy brother, this image would probably be a lot more powerful. Imagine this image, but the only thing different is Luigi. Almost as if the game is pretending everything is okay, unable to grasp the gruesome thing that just happened. The way this story handled blood was also actually quite refreshing. The author points out how odd it is, but that's it. There isn't any mentions of how graphically impossible the blood is, or how realistic it looked, or how horrifying the blood was. The author even calls it cartoony, showing it's out of place, but not too out of place. If blood existed in Mario World, this would be it. The mushroom at the end is a good touch too, and it being left unconfirmed what the mushroom actually would have done is pretty cool. You can only imagine just what horrors it would have inflicted. I remember the fan game for that creepypasta making the mushroom a screamer. It was dumb. Another really good detail is that the author is incredibly hesitant to touch the dead Marios. You can easily assume they'd just be destroyed like any other enemy, and yet there's this feeling, this itch in the back of my brain that makes me simply feel dread at the idea of them being touched. That something horrible, unspeakable, simply ungodly would have happened if he had touched one of them. I don't know what, but I'm glad he didn't get to know. I think my favorite part of the story is the actual other implications of it. The author's intent was clearly to imply everything was actually canon to the actual Mario series. Luigi hates Mario, Mario killed Luigi, Luigi is now crispy. The other implication, though, is that the ROM he had wasn't vanilla. Some sick and or twisted person made this ROM hack only so they could distribute it as a normal ROM. Imagine that for a second. You download a normal ROM from a website only for the game to be subtly different. I like that aspect of the story a lot. Perhaps your ROM collection has a sneaky ROM in it just like this one, waiting to be found out. Want to find out? Creepypastas typically take place in a realm between reality and fiction, where the words of the author can push it further into either. If a bloody Mario slides out of their toilet and starts asking for vital organs, you can pretty much assume it's solely in the realm of fiction. However, there can be cases where a story is very realistic. A story that you could see happening in real life with minimal issue. The story in question today is Pale Luna. Pale Luna is the story about a text adventure game, a very old one, exchanged around the San Francisco Bay Area physically. All known copies are gone. The game was simple, yet not quite simple enough for anyone to beat it. You see, when you first started the game, you would be presented with the text, "You are in a dark room. Moonlight shines through the window. There is gold in the corner, along with a shovel and a rope. There is a door to the east. Command? The only accepted commands were pick up gold, pick up shovel, pick up rope, open door, and go east." The game was, to say the least, difficult. You'd end up in a forest, with the game requesting a direction. Entering the wrong direction would cause a system freeze, requiring a complete restart. A man by the name of Michael Nevins put the full effort into seeing the game to its end, his reward being the text, "Pale Luna smiles wide. There are no paths. Pale Luna smiles wide. The ground is soft. Pale Luna smiles wide. Here." Command? It took a while, but eventually the correct actions were taken. Dig hole, drop gold, and then finally fill hole. The following message was displayed. Congratulations! 40.24248, negative 121.4434. Coordinates. Following said coordinates, he found himself in a forest before some uneven soil. The path taken to reach that point being oddly similar to that of the game. Digging it up, Nevins found a girl's decomposing head. The rest of her was never found. Like I said before, this story exists very closely to our reality. A twisted individual making a poorly coded text adventure game to reveal the coordinates to their victim's buried head to gain the sick satisfaction of putting someone through such a thing. It's not impossible, nor is it unrealistic. It just takes a particularly evil person to pull it off. To finish, I'd like to mention something I still find really chilling. In the story, when trying to use the rope, the game replies with, "You've already used this." Take a moment to think about that. Gold, shovel, and rope. You win the game by burying the gold, but have already used the rope prior to the start of the game. I won't elaborate, as I trust you get the idea. Plush toys, stuffed animals, dolls, whatever you call them. I have a lot of them. One I will never have, though, is anything in the likeness of good old Miles Prower. I'm a passive Sonic fan. I know plenty about Sonic, I enjoy his presence, but I've hardly touched a single game. Ever since I was little, Sonic was just kinda there. I didn't really engage, but I knew about him because of my friends. I don't quite remember who told me exactly, but there was a day when I was told about Sonic R, a very unique racing game, where it all takes place on foot. Well, I wasn't told about the game due to how fun it is, no. I was told about Sonic R because of the rumor. You know the one, right? The rumor that likely pops into your head whenever Sonic R is mentioned? Yeah. The Tails doll curse was something I believed as a kid. I had no reason not to. I had this friend who was like genuinely the nicest person you could ever ask for as a friend, and he would tell me about this with such a strong conviction that I couldn't ignore it. For those who don't know, the Tails doll curse is a pretty simple urban legend. The story goes, as I was told long ago, that if you play Sonic R with a 100% complete save file and tag Supersonic as Tails doll, the Tails doll will begin to haunt you. This urban legend is incredibly varied. Nobody can decide what it does concretely. Well, there are similar pieces. The song Can You Feel the Sunshine is often associated with the Tails doll. And the Tails doll is said to appear to you in real life after completing the required steps as an actual doll. For me, this was the scariest fucking thing I've ever heard. Or at least it was. I remember reading that the Tails doll could turn people into dolls. More specifically, your entire family. Stuff like this scared me so hard as a kid. I remember having nightmares where I'd be in a dark room and I could see a glowing red jewel across the room. The sheer terror still lingers faintly in me after all this time. I remember a dream where Tails doll, mouth full of needle teeth, took a bite out of my arm from the side, engulfing the entire thing while doing so. I felt it. I felt that pain. I still remember it vividly. Thousands of needles pressing into my arm, and yet they would never break skin. No freedom from its maw to be found. Now, this is a creepypasta, right? One about a cursed video game character. So what's the story? I just told you about some urban legend. But what is the story? Well, the Tails doll is like Slender Man. There isn't really the story for him, and yet he is a creepypasta character regardless. Plenty of stories exist for the Tails doll, and I'm sure there's a first one, but even then I'm pretty sure the legend it came before the story. It's weird, but that's just the way it is. To conclude, I will now tell you the time I went to a local fair and saw a stuffed Tails as one of the prizes. I was genuinely terrified that by looking at it, that I had just invited the Tails doll into my life. Yeah, I was really scared of this little fella. There were even times when I'd use the computer at school to look up the Tails doll. Just that basic, most unintimidating image of him was enough to make me fart my eyes out with fear. I've already mentioned this before, multiple times. Mario, the creepypasta that I can't seem to put down. The ROM hack that contains a sinister story. It's weird to say this, but Mario is more realistic than Pale Luna. Why do I say this? Because Mario is real. It's a real ROM hack with a real oddity behind it. It started with a forum post about a weird ROM hack posted to SMW Central. The hack contained a lot of weird text implying Mario is the villain. The first castle ends with a report about a dead body that is missing its eyes. Then, as people began to dig deeper, a text file in the folder was identified as an image. It was corrupted, but looking up its resolution on Google resulted in finding this image. It is implied by the story that this is the body, though obviously it still has its eyes, so... Now, where we left off last time was me asking for help finding out what this image is. According to the story, an admin found the image on Google, implying the image was hosted on another site before finding it. This also means there was another contact to the image prior. Who would post it online, and for what reason would they need to post it prior to the story? Whatever the reason is, nobody knows, especially not me. Now, why am I covering it again? Well, as I was discussing classic video game creepypastas with the close friends, one of them mentioned a sequel to Mario. I was shocked, and soon was very confirmed that such a thing existed. There is an issue here though, which I'll get to in a moment. For now, let me explain. It would seem the original poster of the hack, Mario, came back. They ended up posting another ROM hack, and according to what was uncovered, we now have 2 new victims. Now, if you're like me, you're expecting an image to rival the first one with these 2 new victims, but no such thing exists. According to an Archive 4chan thread, the Victim 2 image did exist at one point, but it's also 4chan. To further confuse us, the Victim 2 image does technically exist, but it's just a simple smiley face. According to multiple people, they've seen the Victim 2 image, though nobody has any backups. Victim 3 does not have an image, but like the first 2, has a description. The following are the descriptions of the 2 new victims. Victim number 2. Although he was still alive when he was found starving in an abandoned apartment, he died from blood loss on the way to the hospital. The place has apparently no tenant or owner. Victim number 3. The victim was found sliced up by a knife in the closet nearby the first victim. There were screws twisted into the victim's leg, suggesting the victim was tortured to death. The victim has no bones. Okay, now I'm gonna have to get a little more serious. Something deep down tells me, as much as I want this to be real, this may not actually be from the original poster. First off, notice how I said it would seem the account is back. That's because it's not the same account. This account, though similar in behavior to an extent, is not the original, but instead a new account. The new account has a lot of files relating to caving, as well as Rainbow Dash. To be fair, the original account had Rainbow Dash images as it was, according to the original account, their favorite pony. The new account also has the original victim image for some reason. Everything comes together in such a way as to make me think this isn't the same person, but instead a game hijacker. Whatever story was being told originally has been taken over, though it doesn't seem I can really ever confirm this either way. The last time the new account was online was March 19th, 2021, but their last post was in 2014. For now, I'll leave you with their user bio. We will return. Look out for us. Countdown 500. Can you read between the lines? Can you see right through us? Bonus entry time! So while I was looking for stories to put in this video, I found one that both was not gaming and not classic. It was added to the wiki this year, implying it's fairly recent. I read through the story and was happy to say by the end of the story I was disgusted and unsettled in all the right ways. This is the tale of cheap figures. I've always liked bootleg toys. They're hilariously awful. Most are way cheaper than stupidly artificially rare collectible pieces, and they're usually much more fun conversation pieces than the real thing. I know it's not great to be supporting illegitimate sources, but everyone's a cog in the money machine anyway, so I'm living for fun. You could call me a garbage collector or something. Either way, I scour the net for the oddest fakes I can find. I've got a whole shelf dedicated to phony toys and trinkets for all sorts of things like Sonic the Hedgehog, My Little Pony, Mario, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, you name it. Enough bragging about things I only find cool though. I want to talk about an unusual find I got off eBay, before it's too late for me. I had found one of those cheap listings for knockoff Pokemon figures in bulk. eBay's crawling with them, but this one in particular caught my eye just by how bad they were. The photos were unique to the specific listing instead of the same stock photo used by several, and the location was supposedly in my state rather than some unspecified place in Hong Kong. When I saw the figures in the photo, I knew I had found the Holy Grail. You see, most bulk bootleg Pokemon figure paint jobs look wonky at best and nearly unrecognizable at worst. Sometimes their faces are sloppy and off-centered. Sometimes they're missing details. Sometimes they're entirely the wrong color. Usually, though, the Pikachu in the set looks perfectly fine, if a little off. I mean, everyone knows what Pikachu looks like. How could you screw it up? Plus, they tend to put better looking figures on the front, hoping you don't notice the half-painted, one-eyed, puke-green Breloom in the back behind the perfect little Pikachu they want you to look at. So when the stock photo for the lot had a weird gray-pink Pikachu with askew eyes front and center, I knew it would only get worse, for the better, from there. And upon inspection of the image, I was right. There were literally not a single Pokemon that looked right. Rarely were they ever the right color, and several had their faces completely screwed up, sometimes even with more or less features. The best part? It was only $250 for a lot of 30. That was like less than 10 cents a figure. So obviously I bought them immediately. Even though the figures were supposedly shipped from my state, they took a month or two to get here. Packing troubles, I guess. The day I got it, I eagerly tore the box open and placed the figures on my table. I won't describe them all since, there are 30 of them. But they were as bad as the photos had shown. I was very pleased to see that I got the weird Pikachu, which I had dubbed Pinkachu. But I also got some other good ones, such as a neon blue Flareon with a red ruff of hair and one eye way lower than the others, a dark yellow Rayquaza with simple white lines in place of its markings, a missing arm, and an eye that looked more like a Charizard's, and a hot pink Snubbull that looked like someone had just dipped its bottom half in black paint, drew dots for the eyes, and called it a day. I gathered them back up into the bag and took them to my living room where I kept my knockoff shelf. But I didn't end up displaying them since, when I came in, a sudden migraine came on and I had to lay down on the couch. I felt awful. My head was spinning and I thought I was going to throw up. But I must have either fallen asleep or passed out. I woke up eventually, feeling way better, though way too groggy. There was a nasty taste in my mouth and my hands were sore. Then I woke up the whole way up and found that I had tore the bag apart in my sleep and apparently was trying to cram the figures in my mouth. Spitting a neon green Dratini and a three-eyed great Panpour out of my now numb mouth, I probably should have immediately called poison control next because I didn't have a clue what could have been in the paint on those things, and I definitely should not have been losing all feeling in my mouth, but I didn't. I don't know why. I guess it just didn't cross my mind because I was too busy freaking out. I counted the figures and luckily I didn't somehow swallow any of them. Turns out I actually had gotten 31 in the bag. I wasn't about to complain about the extra, but it was still weird. I gathered up the ones that I hadn't tried to sleep eat and arranged them on the knockoff shelf, and I set aside the others to clean off later. Then, I went to get a drink of water to wash the awful taste out of my mouth, but I must have been more tired than I thought because I saw my reflection and it looked like one of my eyes was sideways or something, and the iris was weirdly splotchy, like the color was spilling out. I rubbed my eyes and it was back to normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I figured I was just really tired or something, or dying of lead poisoning. But somehow I couldn't bring myself to call a hospital, though I didn't know what time it was. It's not like I didn't have any clocks or anything, I just couldn't read them, like the way books are in a dream. The numbers were just squiggles blurring together. So I just clumsily headed to my bed and practically passed out on the spot. I must have taken the Dratini and Panpour up with me for some reason because they were on top of my alarm clock on the end table beside my bed when I woke up. It was a really gross surprise when I reached to turn off the alarm and felt the still wet and now kind of sticky figures. I didn't turn on my alarm clock that night, so I don't know why it went off. But I got out of bed and the first thing I did was clean off those damn figures and put them on my shelf. There were more figures than I remember, I think. I didn't count again because I still felt sick. My mouth was starting to get feeling back, but it felt wrong. The taste of paint wouldn't go away, and it felt like my whole mouth and my throat had pins and needles. My fingers felt like they were burning, and apparently last night I hadn't even pulled the pieces of the plastic bag out from under my nails. The pieces were nearly embedded or something, so I had to use tweezers to get them out. I almost ended up... No, never mind, I'll just say there was some blood. I wasn't careful, and I was very tired. I hadn't mentioned yet, but I work as a grocery store cashier. I'm pretty sure I worked that day because I distinctly remember my boss telling me that I looked awful, and me just staring at him until he kind of walked away. Maybe I made him uncomfortable. I also remember seeing a kid at checkout with his parents and staring at his shirt silently the whole time until his mom called me a freak. I couldn't help it, though. The kid was wearing a Pokemon shirt with Pikachu on it, off-kiltered eyes and all. I don't know when I got home, but I think the tires to my car popped. I think maybe I popped them. I can't remember. Thinking about it makes me sick. Thinking makes me sick. The shelf definitely has more figures on it this time. I must have put them there. I heard lead poisoning messes with your head and memories and makes you hallucinate. So maybe I got lead poisoning when I was trying to eat the figures and I was slowly dying. I thought about calling 911, but then I threw away my cell phone. Instead, I went upstairs and searched the internet for good Pokemon and scrolled through it for a few hours. Their faces and colors were all wrong, or maybe they were right. Found some figures under my desk when I got up. Later in the night, my house started to smell like burning plastic. The microwave had started on its own, and there were some new Pokemon knockoff figures in it that were being slowly melted. I took them out, brushed more figures off the table. I think I ate the plastic. My mouth hasn't stopped burning since, but maybe that was something else. It's fine. I'm sorry, I'm writing worse and worse, aren't I? There's plastic fumes in here everywhere, and it makes me so ill that it's hard to think. It's okay, though. I can finish, I think. After I maybe ate the plastic, I started gathering all the mirrors in my house. I needed to throw them away because whenever I looked in them, I didn't look right. Like a bad paint job. I still see my reflection in other stuff, like water in my computer screen, but I try not to look at it. The shelf of bootlegs is overflowing with figures and they're spilling out on the floor. I noticed that the other bootlegs I had on there are okay, like a slightly off-model Charizard stuffed toy that looks like Charmander. But when I look at an image of Charmander anywhere else, it doesn't look right. And its colors are wrong, and its face is lopsided, and it looks so plastic. Maybe I've adjusted. It's not so bad, really. I had to lock my door because people kept trying to come in. If they come in, they'll see. I can't let them see, or something might happen to me. I have to step carefully around my house now to not step on the figures. I don't want to break them, since they're already so fragile. I accidentally stepped on one this morning, though, and at least I think it was an accident, but I stomped on it awfully hard, over and over. After the plastic snapped, it started to squelch like meat. Then the others cracked open too. So, this fucking story. Where to begin? Everything about it makes me uncomfortable in a good way. Genuine unease. I actually have some of those figures too. A little pile of them. Thankfully, they don't seem to be multiplying or secretly fleshy on the inside, just really goofy looking. The first thing I want to point out is the replication bay. I already explained pretty well in the last SCP video how terrifying multiplying objects can be, even if they're as mundane as cake. These things featured in the story, the so-called bootleg Pokemon figures, are capable of multiplication. Now, one point I don't fully understand is their method of getting into the author's mouth. Does their presence result in the mental effects seen throughout the story? Does their paint do that? Does this mean they're capable of locomotion? And that ending, the plastic snapping and the meat squelching? The author already states, I have to step carefully around my house now as to not step on the figures. I don't want to break them since they're already so fragile. Which, I know from experience they aren't. They're like chunks of somewhat jagged plastic, and they would likely bore a hole in your foot before giving in to your weight when stomping on them multiple times. This implies perhaps they're changing physically. At the very end, that last line, and the others cracked open too, implies even the ones that weren't stepped on begin to crack, almost as though they were hatching. This further supports the idea that they are changing physically. My final conclusion to draw from this story is that the cheap figures are actually somehow some sort of organism that feeds off a host. This host protects them, as seen by the line, "I had to lock my door because people kept trying to come in. If they come in, they'll see. I can't let them see or something might happen to me." Something about the mental and physical state of the host changes as a result of their presence. Then finally, as seen by the end, the organisms aren't actually the cheap figures, but perhaps something inside of them that can hatch from its shell. That's just my conclusion. It's probably wrong. The story is good. I liked it a lot. I just wish we could get more stories like this. Short, simple, and interesting. Damn, the pasta really was kind of unsettling. They didn't lie. This video was fun to make. Getting to re-experience what used to scare me so much and also getting to find something new that scares me is awesome. I will admit, this wasn't the original video I was making. Same thing happened with the last SCP video. I lost interest in the old video and so I started a new one. Glad I got to do this. And I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, there is more coming. Eventually. So be sure to tune in next time for Midnight Crick plays the same fart sound for 3 hours at max volume ASMR. Have a fungus. Just, not this one. The new account has a lot of the files relating to the cave. You know what, the cave? No. Rarely were they ever the right color. When I woke up, the whole way up, and found out I had tore the plastic bag apart in my sleep, and apparently was trying to... That's not a real statement. Hold on.